Hey, what's going on, everyone? Darby here, and today I am with Skip Foster, who is the Chief Operations Officer at Easy Webinar and a power user of Jarvis, the tool we all like, know, and love here at Jarvis Underground. So I asked Skip if he'd be kind enough to come on today and share with us a little bit of his tricks with Jarvis, along with kind of how we got started using it. And we'll just kind of go from there, keep this a pretty open-ended conversation. We'd love to know what you guys find valuable out of this, what your questions are, so we can help answer those on the next episodes or outside of the show. So Skip, thank you so much for being here. Just in the context of Jarvis, but you did take one of the 7-day book challenges, one of our early ones. If I think it might have been the first or second one that we ran. So it's been really cool seeing your book evolve over time. But I kind of want to just open the floor to you to give people a little bit of a background of kind of maybe your journey to Jarvis and the biggest things that you're using Jarvis in right now.
The CEO of Easy Webinar first got a message, I think from Dave, when Jarvis first even came out. I don't even know when it was, but it was before it actually went public, in the public launch, and was asking people to test it, and asked him to test it, and he gave me the link and said, "Hey, check this out, see what's going on." I went in there and played with it and was like, okay, yeah, another tool, whatever, kind of a deal. And then dismissed it because it was I just don't have time to figure something else out, all that kind of stuff. My wife and I have been blogging just on the side, doing some side jobs, some affiliate marketing stuff. Anyway, I thought, let me go back and check it out and see if it's worth my time to learn how to do that. So I went back in there, and of course, it doesn't take long, minutes, and you're addicted, right? Or of course, back then it was just the templates, right?
Yeah.
And that was even before Boss Mode, but we'd go there and click on that. I was just oh, this is so cool, And then we started obviously learning the power of it and how it can be used. One of the features that have been really great for us at Easy Webinar is that we have a lot of foreign VAs and who are doing our social media and stuff like that. And so the language transposer or something like that, works really well. They have a primary language that's not English to be able to type out a social media post and then have Jarvis, transpose it over to English correctly, or even just fixing sentence structure, using the improved content, right? Improve this content, right? And a content improver, putting a sentence in there that is just horrible grammar in English, and putting it in there and having it pop out something that's really nice, or do the persuasive copy when it comes to social media posts and stuff like that. So the uses that we're finding for it as a company are just crazy. Of course, we use it for our blogging. We use it for the social media posts. Our VAs are using it. Our support team uses it if they're trying to figure out the best way to word something. And then I myself am using it to write my book. My boss at Easy Webinar, Casey Zeman, he has a book that was written, and I'm putting it back through Jarvis to kind of improve it and fix it. It's just one of those tools that once you get into it and start realizing that it truly is the way that Dave explains it, as far as it's your assistant, that if you say, how do I word this better? And your assistant knows the answer. And all of a sudden you're like, whoa, yeah, that's cool. The time savings that it gives you. I can have a thought and I can turn that thought into a blog article for us, a webinar presentation, a book, using Jarvis in no time flat. And that's the cool part about it. You come up with a thought, right? You got to know where you're going. You got to have a direction. But once you have that direction, you don't have to have all the information. You don't have to have the outline and the title and the persuasive headline and the great body copy and all that kind of stuff. Let Jarvis take care of that. So it's that point where you're like, oh, I have a cool idea, just don't know where to go with this. Well, that's where Jarvis takes off and just crushes it. So
yeah, that's the part that I think I had the most fun with is saying, how can I give Jarvis as much information in 600 characters and let's see where this goes from here.
Right.
One thing you said that caught my ear was you have your VAs write in their language and then they'll transpose it here.
So the majority of our support team at Easy Webinar are in the Philippines, and they're wonderful people. They're full-time with us. But there are times when I would see them post something and I'd go, let's make that sound a bit more professional. Let's fix that. Let's adjust that. Well, now we've given them Jarvis access to their Jarvis tool, and they can go in there and they can type whatever they want in there. They can even type it in Filipino, and Jarvis will fix it into English for them. Or the better use, which is I think what they're doing most of the time, is they're typing it in to their best of their English ability, which in most cases is pretty good. It's just not that extra edge, and Jarvis gives them that extra. So they can put that into the content improver template, pop a paragraph in there, how they're responding or something in support. I make them do that because I want it not just to be a post. I want it to be a persuasive post, right? I want it to be something that actually has good copy and all that kind of stuff. And that's where Jarvis takes off. That's its specialty, is to take a sentence that we think is fairly decent, but let's add that extra edge of what's going to make it clickable, right? That kind of a thing.
The tone of voice is a pretty cool tool on here that I think is probably like overlooked too easily by people that are just starting with Jarvis and trying to take everything in, because it is a lot at first. What are some cool things that you've come to discover in terms of utilizing the tone of voice in combination of what you're doing?
Yeah, so with tone of voice, and a really good example of this is my wife does craft blogging. She's got a craft business. She sells a lot of products on Etsy. That's her full-time business, but we're starting to get into blogging with that to build some organic traffic over to her Etsy shop. And with that, we have found, for instance, one of the best voices we have found that writes really good copy for crafters is Martha Stewart. And so, we'll write something and then we'll say, write this in the tone of voice of Martha Stewart. If I were to have anybody write my copy, I guess here's a good way to figure that out. If I could choose anybody on the planet, no matter who they were, where they were, or what they would charge me to write my copy, who would that be? If you could choose Warren Buffett to write your copy for your financial institutional blog, would you do that? Oh, absolutely. Great. Then choose that as your tone of voice. Because you can. It's like think about it. That's really cool, because it's like being able to hire them for free. It's like, I just hired Warren Buffett to write my copy in Jarvis, and check it out. It's wonderful.
Yeah, like another example, it just came to mind, but like, it doesn't matter really what industry, as long as the person has had enough content on the internet that Jarvis would understand what they're saying.
There's 3 different types we have found in our blogging that we've done. One is the tone of voice, like expressive or persuasive or happy, right? There's that. There's also the person, but the other one too that works really good with us that we have found is a business that has a site with a blog on it.
I hadn't really thought about the business side, because they contain the content. So Jarvis is probably just referencing like, oh, Home Depot writes a lot about construction. What are some other tricks that you might, or things just from your experience that you would really recommend people focus on at the beginning, as like kind of foundationally, this is a good base to understand all of this stuff before you even start to get to the complicated stuff?
Sure. I think because I would see this a lot in the Facebook group, people complaining about the way Jarvis writes. Oh, look at this stupid thing Jarvis came up with, right? And it doesn't take much, because there's YouTube, we've got YouTube videos all over the place about how Jarvis writes.
And the boot camp is a really great resource that everyone should check out. The boot camp should go through that.
Yeah. But if you understand how it thinks and how it's writing, it's easier for you to come up with content for it to guide it and help it. First of all, understand how Jarvis thinks. Like you said, go through the boot camp. Everything's in there that you need to know to understand how it thinks. Once you know how it thinks, you're better able to feed it information. And remember the fact that Jarvis operates on context and content. So if you put in there, write a book in 7 days, how to write a book in 7 days, and then just say, give me all the information, you'll come up with some, but it doesn't take long before it starts getting off track.
Yeah.
Because that's all it has. It doesn't have any context about, we're going to write this with AI, we're going to, use, an introduction, and chapter 1 is like, why are we doing this? And the more context, not content, context that Jarvis has to operate with, the better it's going to be. So I switched out of frustration when I was writing my book, because when I was writing my book, I was like, oh, here's my I did that. Like, here's my title. And then just help me. And it just kept getting off track and kept getting off track and kept getting off track. And I would struggle with that and think, why is this like sending me this direction when I want to go this direction? Well, it's because it didn't know the direction I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell it, right? You have to give it context, and you have to give it enough of a direction to go. And it's going, if you work with it like a little at a time. And then what I mean by that is not just all of a sudden just like go through all the recipes and everything, because as a matter of fact, I was practicing right before this, and I literally wrote down how to write a book in 7 days, and I put in a whole bunch of stuff. Well, by the end of it, it was writing something about the iPhone 11. You know, I was like, okay, you are so far off track, it's unbelievable. But that's why it's like, and that frustrates people. You can look in the Jarvis, community Facebook group, and they're like, oh, it's stupid, it doesn't work, blah blah blah. Well, no, it's because you didn't tell it what you were thinking, and it doesn't know what you're thinking. So yeah.
Yeah, I think even with that in mind, like every now and then I still do experience sometimes Jarvis can go a little off the rails in some instances. Because remember, guys, it's tech, it's not perfect.
Original thought coming from our tone of voice really matters. I think that, for instance, okay, like we have blogs, right? I've got a blog, you got a blog, whatever. My wife's got a blog, but we write in our own tone, right? I mean, we've got our ways of doing things. We've got our ways of saying things. We've got certain words we use, and I just would be concerned, like I said, not from an ethical point of view, I could care less, but from a point of, would we lose our own personality in our blog writing if we allow it to do too much? Because I do enjoy the fact that I can go in there and change and adjust, and like the cool part about it is you can have a paragraph that that it spits out and change 2 or 3 words and then just say compose more, and all of a sudden it follows that new stream of thought. That's really cool, right? And once it knows how I word things, like it may use one word, I can't even think of an example right now, but like for instance, in webinar world, we have live webinars, we have automated webinars, and some people call automated webinars evergreen webinars, simulated live, all that kind of stuff, right? The live webinar is a live webinar, but sometimes the automated webinar gets named different things. And I have found that if I keep changing automated to evergreen, it eventually gets it, and it starts calling it not an automated webinar, but an evergreen webinar. So I don't know. I guess I still like that part of it, that our own personal individuality comes out in our blog writing.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the editor's touch or like the final spin on it that I find is going to be hard to replace, the human aspect of it. And I don't think we should. I think that the AI is the tool, right? And it's helping people get to the next level. Once you like start losing that ownership of the words that you're putting out there and you're just letting the AI do all the thinking for you, is that going to actually end up causing more harm than good down the road? And it might.
Here's what I think, because we all have followers that follow us. What I mean is, there are people that follow you in your industry. There's people that follow other book people that say, hey, read it, right? And there are people that, like, whatever. There's dozens of people that are teaching people how to write books in various forms and various speeds and various time frames. And we all are attracted to a certain character. It's that attractive character, right? And we follow you because you're not only helping us and giving value, but it's just the way you do things. You're not sitting out in your Lamborghini teaching people how to write books. Oh, I wrote this book and look what I bought. I bought a Lamborghini, right? That attracts people. Now, there's other people who like the guy who's sitting in his Lamborghini and says, I wrote a book and I bought a Lamborghini. I think that we need to keep that individuality, because that's what draws people to us. People aren't drawn to me because I put out content. They're drawn to me because they like the way I do things. They like the way you do things. They like the way Russell does things. They like the way Dave does things, right? They like the way, whoever, name your attractive character that we follow on Facebook, Instagram, blogging, whatever, YouTube. If I'm stuck, like if I'm writing, if my brain's going, I let my brain go. I don't worry about Jarvis. But then I'll put something out there, and then I'll go in and I'll say at the end I'll go to in the middle of the blog, like, oh, this is great, but maybe there's more to this. And I'll go into in the middle of my blog article I just wrote, and I'll go at the end of a paragraph and say, compose, give me some more. And sometimes it's like, oh man, never thought of that. That's awesome. Yes, I can use that. And other times it's like, no, I guess what I had was good enough, kind of a thing. But and so that's what I use it for, to be able to expound on things that I've already written and that it knows, rather than saying, write me a blog article about this. I could care less. If that's the way you do things, that's cool. And if it works for you, That's wonderful. And that's what Jarvis is for, right? And for me, myself, is I like to use Jarvis, as we've been saying this whole time, as that personal assistant that knows more than I do as far as how to write persuasive copy or better copy or more copy, and say, hey, what else could I put here? Is there another sentence after this paragraph that we could hit?
I'd love to kind of maybe segue into like how these other tools that we can use, not just Jarvis alone, but there's like other AI tools for research like Phrase, and obviously like Shortly is one that has maybe some different contexts that it might make more sense.
Right.
But like Stream Deck, for example, and we can share a screen if we want to like show how it actually uses and whatnot. Feel free to do that.
Okay.
How are some ways that you're using, and maybe like a really quick like what is Stream Deck for anyone that's not sure, but like what are some ways that you're using it, some workflows, and some ways that you found that this can even help you speed things up when you're ready for it?
This is Stream Deck. So it is a USB device that is basically a short code generator. There we go. Literally, you can make it do whatever you want it to do because it's all short code stuff. So a button gets assigned to a short code to an action on your computer. So these are the buttons. Now, I'm not going to get into a sales pitch for Stream Deck, but it comes in 6 buttons. This one here is the 15 button, and there's a 32 button as well. And it also has a phone app too. So if you're like, I just don't want to, as a matter of fact, that's what I did. And I think the phone app has a trial. I don't remember how many days it was, but that's what I did first to make sure I really wanted to it before I actually bought this. But anyway, you can assign whatever you want to assign here. So because you're getting into the Jarvis thing, here's my Jarvis button right here. So if I click on my Jarvis button, it takes me in here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this one here says compose. All right, so if I click on compose, if you go down here and look, the hotkey is Command J. So when I hit compose, it is the Command J. Now you might say, well, why not just hit Command J, or just hit the button, right? But the benefit is to actually start stacking things, because first of all, I can jam on that button over and over and over and over again. Just makes it a little bit quicker. But if you look at other things, for instance, PAS, right? And so this one here, it says it has 2 actions, and there is and I'll show you here where we can really stack these on the recipes. But the first one is text, and the text says, it'll type this out: create a PAS for above. And then, of course, because we need this, the Shift Command Enter, right, for execute command. Okay, so now when I hit this button that says PAS, it's going to go into Jarvis, and it's going to type out without me having to type it out. It'll type out, what did I say? Create a PAS for above, and then it will do Command Shift Enter. And I can do this with anything. I can make all the commands, anything I do, like bullet points, right? And so there are 2 actions in here. The first one is text, which says create a list of bullet points on above, and then Command Shift Enter, right? So that's that. Now this is where it gets really cool. So I can come in here and I can do, if you notice over here, these are all the different things that I can. One of the things you have here is multi-action, which is this one right here. It says multi-action. And this is a multi-action button. You can see here there are 43 actions that happen on this button. This is Idea Factory. The Idea Factory. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken this recipe inside the Idea Factory, this whole thing right here, and I put it into my Stream Deck. And so let's go back to that.
Basically, you're just grabbing the recipe and listing its commands right there as it is.
Right. And so there's 43 actions. And you have to kind of think this through a little bit, because you have to kind of like plan it out. And I'll show you how it works in real time here in a second. So the first one it does is say, write some headlines for the above. Then it does the command, right? Control Shift or whatever it is, Shift Command Enter. Then there's a delay for 15 seconds because it's going to write it out. I'm giving it time before I just keep command because Jarvis gets confused. I give Jarvis a chance to actually write all that out. Then I have another hotkey that is enter, just so I've got a space. Otherwise, it'll just jam everything together in one big paragraph. And then I just keep going. The next one is write some headlines for the above, right? Same thing. Execute it, wait for it to execute, hit the enter space, the next one. So I've taken this whole recipe and I've popped it into this. So literally all I have to do, and if you don't mind me, I'm going to go back to Jarvis here. All right. So like from here, let's start from something from scratch. And I'm going to give this a title. Let's see. How to create a business framework for productivity. Whatever. I'm making this up as I go. Okay, how come I get to the productivity? There we go. All right. So now I'm sitting here and I can now, I'm going to push this idea factory button and here we go. Now it's waiting, giving it a chance, and then it'll enter will happen.
Can you pause it when you're mid-flow and go back and adjust? Can't? Okay.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, I was playing with that, and I'll show you that in a second. There are some recipes that require you to do input. Like, for instance, another one I have in here is the blog recipe, but it says, like, write ideas for outline 1, write ideas for outline 2, right? And so you have to be giving it some input in there. And I'll show you what I did with that in a second here. But what I did was I had a longer wait time. I did like 30 seconds of wait. That way I had a chance to be able to put in those variables in there.
Oh, so you timed the wait out longer and then you just typed it out, and
then I can fill and I actually put in there in brackets what I needed to fill in. I'll show it to you in a second. And then the other thing I've learned
we've just been talking here and Jarvis is spitting out ideas.
Yeah. And I'm not touching anything. I hit this button once and
Crazy.
it's just doing it. The other thing I learned, and you'll see it here in a second, I've learned that I never really know when this is finished. Because as you say, sometimes Jarvis stalls and like thinks for a little bit. So I actually had to put a final one in there that says done, just so I know that, okay, this whole thing is finished working. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing. I mean, you can take this and build whatever you want to build. I mean, you can write a book about this by taking all this information and obviously feeding it back into Jarvis and building it all out. But
so maybe like on the topic of like a book, right? If you're coming into the book, you're saying, I need to write an outline, or I need ideas for different topics inside of my book. I know the title or the working title of my book, but I need some help brainstorming it. And none of my friends want to help me write a book. They're all too busy. What am I to do? Go hire Jarvis for a month and and pay Skip to help you set up your Stream Deck.
In this case, with using Stream Deck, I'd make sure that the content brief was written first, and I have a button for that, compose the content brief. Then it could do that. But the rest of it is, for instance, write blog title ideas. Well, that's easy. Write introduction. That's easy. Write a blog outline is cool. But then it says write about outline item 1, outline item 2, outline 3. So you have to fill it in. So in those inside of Stream Deck, I have it execute, but I don't have it do the command return, because I don't want it to execute on information about outline 1. I have a 30-second pause, and I'm going up while that's happening. I'm going up inside of Jarvis and I'm copying outline 1 and I'm pasting it in there. And then if I let my mouse go, 30 seconds later, it will execute that and write information about outline 1. Then it says write information about outline 2. It gives me a chance to go up, copy, paste. So I'm kind of interacting with it in between everything. And I put a prompt in that says, "Hey, you need more information here, dude." So yes, you can't interrupt it, like you can't pause it, but if you can put delays in Stream Deck that gives you enough time to interact with Jarvis in between everything. So that's kind of cool.
I mean, it's almost like you're putting yourself like on the clock purposefully. So it's like, oh well, if I don't keep up with this, then do you have to start up the Stream Deck all the way back to the beginning if like you were to miss a spot right there?
Yeah, you would have to make yourself a longer pause. 30 seconds has been more than enough time. I've done this several times with blog articles. You're literally just copying and pasting in there. But you can set the delay in Stream Deck to be anything you want it to be.
What are some of the other ones, the digital ones? I know, like the ones that you can just have on your phone, because I know there's a way that you can get this set up strictly on your phone if you didn't want to go out and buy like a piece of hardware.
It'll come in there or not, but come on, there it goes. Yeah, cool. So touch portal is what it's called, and then it gives you a bunch of buttons, and then you program the buttons to do whatever you want them to do.
Anyone can do the setup, right? They can go in, they can find the recipes that they're making. You know, there's the public recipes right now. Some people just have their recipes private. How long did it take you to set that one recipe up?
First, probably like 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Let's call it 5 minutes.
That fast?
Wow. But oh yeah, because it's just But then when I ran it, I realized the flaw in my system. The first time I did it, I executed, but I didn't have that secondary return where it put a space in, and it just jammed everything together because there was no returns in there. So you just learn, like you execute it and you look back at it and go, oh, okay, that didn't work. Well, why didn't it work? Because they're all jammed together. Well, let me unjam them by putting in a carriage return after every one of those executions so that at least there's space. So yeah, and now here's the deal. Taking the time to set that up doesn't work if you're going to use it one time, right? I mean, I use it, the main one I have, the Idea Factory, there's only two multitask recipes that I've set up. Idea Factory, because I use that all the time when I'm just thinking of, oh, I'd like to write an article about this, but what are all the parameters and what are all the directions I could go? Idea Factory recipe is fantastic for that. The other one is the blog recipe, because I do that a lot when I'm first starting off a blog article, find out, okay, what direction could this go? Again, I have an idea, I have a thought. I kind of know where I want to go, but what does Jarvis think, right? It doesn't work if you're going to use it once a month or something like that. Your book one, I actually played with that today and put that in there. It's crazy long, but how often are you really going to use that? Like now, if you find yourself writing books often, that's a great one to have in there. But it doesn't make sense time-wise to put something in there that you're only going to use once. Pro tip is I always use execute and keep, because it will execute something. Like for instance, if I say, improve this content, right? Improve content above. Let's say I did that and I just pushed the execute button. Well, as we know, execute alone makes the command disappear.
Right.
Yeah. The problem is that if you got a page full of that stuff, you forget what you were executing, and you're like, oh, why did it write that? What is that, and why did it write that? So I always do command and keep, just so that I can look back at my document and go, oh yeah, that's what I was telling it to do. Write a PAS, or write a before after bridge, or write this on, explain this to a child, right? Things like that, and then I can erase all those later. But it's always nice to be able to. So I use command and keep all the time now.
Would you recommend this type of tool to somebody just getting started if they wanted to really like dig in, or is it something that you'd want for people to have their bearings under them a little bit before they even look at doing something like Stream Deck into their stack?
For Jarvis alone, I don't know that a brand new person would find a whole lot of it'd be fun to play with if you're a techie. It would and geek out and stuff like that. It'd be fun to play with in the beginning. If you use Jarvis a lot, it makes it a lot faster. So if you use Jarvis every day like we do, it makes it a lot faster. Now, when you can integrate it into all the rest of your life in your world and all the other things that you do, that's when you realize it's like so much better, right? I mean, like for instance, one of the things on Stream Deck here is I can hit a button and boom, I can do this, right? Or if I want to share my screen, I can come over here and I can do this, right? Or whatever, right? And so that's another feature of Stream Deck. So I've integrated it into everything, including my live streaming and everything else that I do, right? I can just tap these buttons here, like I can hit this button, which will go away, but like that, and boom, my screen. So you'll learn to eventually put it into all the rest of your life as well. Like for instance, one of the things I have on here is on that top row is all timers, and they're timers for me. I have just in my life, I have 55 minutes, 30 minutes, 50 minutes, and 5 minutes. So for me, they're like, okay, I'm into something, probably shouldn't be into, like Facebook, or I'm reading my emails, I can get lost in here. I'll hit the 5-minute timer and give myself 5 more minutes, and then the timer goes off, right? I mean, simple things like that where, for me, Stream Deck really improves my productivity because I work at home, because I'm in front of my computer all day long. I need those little edges and things.
I know you've used
Use Phrase.
pretty heavily. Also a tool built on top of AI. What are some ways that you use that in your blogging and your book writing and any other aspect?
Yeah, and it's funny because I bought the annual version of Phrase accidentally, which is pretty expensive. Anyway, I was like, okay, now I got to figure out how to like have this make me some money rather than just paying all this money for this thing. And I did. So Phrase is great, obviously, like you said, for going in and finding those real numbers. The one thing that's really cool about Phrase is it'll pull out statistics. Like, use Phrase and type in a question like that, or a blog topic or anything like that, and have it go into the internet and do all the research for you and pull it up. So yes, that's what I use it for, is to be able to kind of organize my thoughts ahead of time if I know I'm going into a topic that is going to have some heavy competition. If it's something that I just know and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to write this blog article just because I want to write it, not because I'm going to compete with anybody in Google search, but just because it's been on my mind, and really something I want to write about, I'll just go into Jarvis and just write it because it's me. It's just what I want to do. However, obviously, most of my stuff, I want to compete, right? I want to rank. And Jarvis is cool, but by itself, it's not necessarily going to create things that rank, because there's already 10 on the homepage. There's already 10 on the second page. There's already 10 on the third page. So how do I beat those guys? Well, the only way to do that is to know what's in their content. And I can click on every one of them and I can read them all, and I can hand write down all their H2 tags and all that kind of stuff. But why not use a tool like Phrase and just get it done yourself? So
the acceleration of creating quality content and actually like providing value to here, right? Because you know what people are actually asking, and like, sure, you can go and do it maybe like the slow way of going and actually typing stuff into Google and do all of that. See, Martin is saying Jarvis has changed my life. It's awesome, Martin. Appreciate the feedback there. Devin, great to see you. Thanks for being here. Devin had a question actually. He said, "What is the website for the platform Phrase?" I think it's spelled differently. It's
FRASEIO.io. FRASE.io. So,
what are some ways that you yourself had added extra income on that you didn't have there before because of these tools?
The biggest way we've made money from this is content. I've been amazed at the flip in how much more traffic we've gotten from organic, content-driven traffic, people going to our blog articles, that we didn't have before, because we have more content. Where before I was struggling because I had to handwrite everything. We all did, right? To write, oh man, I got to write a blog article. Well, what are you going to write about, right? Even if you're doing one a week like we were doing, now we're able to pump out content in, I could do it faster, but we're even, we're doing 2 to 3 a week now. I have noticed in the last, let's call it 4 months, in looking at our Google Analytics and we use Segmetrics for a lot of our information, as far as like where are our customers coming from, and where's our actual money coming from. And it's been amazing how much of a shift we have gone from the majority of our income coming from paid traffic, and now like a huge majority, let's call it like 65%, which is pretty decently big. It's not 51, is now coming from organic search, content-driven traffic to our blogs. The biggest way to get attention in the search results or blogging is answer people's questions, right? Because that's what they're searching for. Nobody is searching for you. I hate to say that, but guess what? Nobody cares about you, and nobody's searching for you. They could give a rip about you and your life and your business. They are trying to find results to their problems, and they're asking questions in the search engines, right? I mean, it's the whole thing of, how do I write my book faster? How do I write a book, right? How do I do this, right? How do I write a blog article? whatever their questions are in your industry, using a tool like Phrase or even just going to google.com and looking at the frequently asked questions and what do they call it? I can't remember that section, but I use that all the time. I just never paid attention. People also ask, that's what it is. That section that's kind of in the middle of all that, there's gold in there because it's like people also ask. So like whatever you're typing in there, so how to write a book in 7 days, let's say that was it. Go down to that people also ask section right there. That's like there are additional questions there. You take one of those questions and run that into Jarvis and create a blog article about that. Now, when somebody searches for that question, guess who shows up? You do.
Keep that human element in there. You know, it's context over content when it comes to Jarvis, right? Important thing to remember whenever you're actually writing these articles. But, you know, at the end of the day, especially if you guys are, whether you're using it for blogs or books or social media posts or anything in between, right? If you're using these tools to provide more value to other people's lives, the reciprocity will be there. And, you know, just like Skip said, the amount of growth that they've seen on the organic side because they're being more helpful is growing their business at a faster rate because now there's all this organic money you can put back into other advertising channels, you know, and infrastructure and everything else there. So Skip, thank you so much for dropping these nuggets of value throughout our call today. Join us on the free Facebook group if you haven't already at Jarvis Underground. You can find it there. I think if you go to jarvisunderground.com right now, that will help redirect you there too. And anyone interested in more content like this, I'm building up our newsletter side of things. We're still getting the blog up and running, you know, getting our sequences for getting these emails out, but we want to keep doing this type of content to help you get the most out of not only your Jarvis subscription, but your other services and AI in particular for helping you grow your brand and grow your business. So thank you all for being here today. Other than that, guys, we will see you all next time. Cheers.
Right. Thanks. Bye.